the Speaker of the National Assembly appointed the following members to represent the Assembly to the Mediation Committee that will attempt to develop a version of the bill that both houses will pass. 1, the Honorable Chachu Ganya, MP. 2, the Honorable Ali Amin Dedi, MP. 3, the Honorable Rosa Akinyi Buyu, MP. 4, Honorable Paul Musimi Nzengu, MP. And 5, the Honorable Shinali Bernard Masaka, MP. Honorable Senators, consequently, pursuant to the Standing Orders 162, I have appointed the following senators to the Mediation Committee. 1, Senator Mwangi Kidhiome, MP. 2, Senator James Mwaruma, MP. 3, Senator Njeru Ndwika, MP. 4, Senator Architect Sylvia Kasanga, MP, and Senator CPA Farhia Haji, MP. I urge the members of the Mediation Committee to deal with this important assignment expeditiously and report within the stipulated timelines. I thank you. Honorable Senators, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to the Standing Order 41.3 and 4, I received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the passage of the Elections Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 37 of 2021. The message, which is dated Thursday, 21st April 2022, was received on 21st April 2021 while the Senate was on recess. Pursuant to the said standing orders, I now report the message that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 41.1 and 142 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas the Election Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, National Bill number 37 of 2021 was published via the Gazette Supplement number 157 of the 12th August 2021 as a bill concerning county governments in terms of Article 110(1) of the Constitution, seeking to amend the Electoral Campaign Financing Act and for connected purposes. And whereas the National Assembly passed the said bill on Wednesday, 13th April 2022, without amendments in the form attached hereto. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 110 of the Constitution and Standing Orders number 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the said decision of the National Assembly to the Senate. Pursuant to Standing Order number 157, which requires that a bill originating in the National Assembly be proceeded with by the Senate in the same manner as bill introduced in the Senate by way of first reading, in accordance with the Standing Orders and 139, I direct that the Election Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 37 of 2021, be listed for first reading during tomorrow's sitting. I thank you. Honorable Senators, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order number 41.3 and 4, I received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the passage of the Elections Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2022. The message, which is dated that Thursday, 21st April 2022, was received on 21st April 2022 while the Senate was on recess. Pursuant to the said standing order, I now report the message that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order number 41.1 and 142 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas the Elections Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2022 was published via the Gazette Supplement number 12 of 28th April, January 2022 as a bill concerning county governments in terms of Article 110(1) of the Constitution, seeking to amend the Election Act. And whereas the National Assembly passed the said bill on Wednesday, 13th April 2022 with amendments in the form attached hereto, now therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 110 of the Constitution and Standing Orders number 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the said decision of the National Assembly to the Senate. Pursuant to Standing Orders number 157, which requires that a bill originating in the National Assembly be proceeded with by the Senate in the same manner as bill introduced in the Senate by way of first reading in accordance with Standing Order 139, I direct that the Election Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2022 be listed for first reading during tomorrow's sitting. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements. Order number 8, the county allocation of revenue bill, Senate bills number 1 of 2022, first reading. a bill for an act of parliament to provide for the equitable allocation of revenue raised nationally among the county governments for the 2022-2023 financial year, the responsibilities of national and county government pursuant to such allocation and for connected purposes.
Okay, honorable senators, before we proceed to order number 9, I have a brief communication that relates to that order. And that is, as you are aware, the body of His Excellency, the late Mwai Kibaki, is lying in state in Parliament buildings for the third and final day. In this regard, today's sitting is scheduled to end at or before 5 p.m. to allow certain steps attendant to the departure of the body of His Excellency, the late former president. Arrangements have been put in place to ensure that all senators accord His Excellency the late Mwai Kibaki a befitting parliamentary honor. In this regard, the sequence of events will be as follows. 1, debate in respect of the motion under order number 9 will end at or before 5 p.m. 2, immediately after that, the Speaker's procession will leave the chamber in the usual manner. 3, thereafter, all senators will leave the chamber and converge at the main parliament gate facing KICC and await the body of His Excellency the late Mwai Kibaki as it exits parliament buildings. The Chief Sergeant at Arms will guide members on the designated waiting place. 4, the Speaker, the leaders of majority and minority parties, the majority and minority whips, and the clerks at the table will converge at the National Assembly Speaker's walkway to accompany the procession of the body together with the leadership of the National Assembly. 5, on arrival of the casket of His Excellency the late Mwai Kibaki at the gate of facing KICC, all members are required to await the playing of the national anthem and the East Africa Community Anthem before the casket is located into the carriage to exit Parliament buildings. 6, the parliamentary procession will symbolize Parliament paying its last respect and honoring His Excellency the third President of Kenya, the late Mwai Kibaki, for his service to Parliament and the nation. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 9, motion. Tribute of the Senate on the demise of the third President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency the late Emilio Mwai Kibaki, CGH.
The Deputy Speaker would like to take the first go and leave, then Senator Haniri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know my brother has understood because I would like to relieve you at some point. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to join you and all senators in mourning the death of our third president, the Honorable Emilio Mwai Kibaki. Mr. Speaker, may I take this first opportunity on behalf of the people of Uasin Gishu County, on behalf of my family, on behalf of myself, to pass my most sincere condolences to the family of the departed former president. My prayers are with him. Mr. Speaker, I am one person who was honored to work as a minister under President Mwai Kibaki. And I'd like to just say a few things about what I learned from this very committed Kenyan. Mwai Kibaki was a man of few words, but very clear words. He had very clear instructions to us as his cabinet, and especially when he dealt with you as an individual, as a cabinet minister. discussing issues to do with your docket. Mr. Speaker, 1 week after my appointment, I had a sitting with His Excellency the President then, and he gave me one instruction that shaped my being the Minister for Higher Education. That one, and being the Minister for Higher Education, Science and Technology, he asked me, and it was amazing because this was a very humble president. He tells you, I called you because I want to request you to ensure that I have an opportunity to expand the universities in this country. At the time, we had only 7 universities and a good number of university colleges. I went back to the ministry, being 1 week old, and gathered information on how to do it. And I was very delighted to have a team that was very active, that was ready to move. And we moved, Mr. Speaker, because what it required was that we had to change the university law so we can have one charter for all the universities, which was the challenge that 4 former ministers had faced. I was just fortunate that they had come from the university because the challenges were coming from the university. I went back to the president and I said, I would have to change the law, and he said, that's exactly what I'm expecting you to do, change the law first. And we worked on the law, and it appeared like I thought it was going to take a very short time. In excitement, I was telling him in 6 months we should be ready. Later, it took me 6 months to get the laws to Parliament because we had to break the laws, have higher education separate from science and technology. So we had a law on higher education, a law on science and technology, and a law on technical training. I went back and I said I needed time, and he said yes. He was a very patient president. I will always remember Kibaki for his patience, for his very calm guidance, very calm way of instructing you. He never came out loud. He was very calm, but he was extremely focused. Every time we went to him, he was very clear where we should be going, and he said, please do that. What Kibaki was known for was that he tells you, I've given you the job, I expect you to do it, just come and update me. One very amazing thing that Kibaki did as president was that he said he was not going to be a chancellor of any university. He only took one university, Masinde Muliro. So as we were preparing this, I would go back and say, how about giving you a few more universities as chancellor? He said, no, there are very many Kenyans who can be chancellors. I will only be the chancellor of one university. And he said, and I will also attend only one graduation, the university where I'm going to preside as the chancellor, which was really a very humbling comment from a head of state. So he remained a chancellor of one university. And the other thing that was required as we were preparing the charter, which I was amazed at his reaction, was when we were naming universities, because to get a charter, there are 2 things that we had to do. We had to name the university and name the chancellor. So one day I went to him and I said, we have named these universities, and then there's one I didn't show him the name. I said, Karatina University, we want to change the name. So he tells me, what name do you want to give Karatina University? And I said, Your Excellency, we want to call it Mwai Kibaki University. He looked at me and bursted into laughter and looked at me again and said, why do you want to have it Mwai Kibaki University? I said, Your Excellency, you are going to release 15 universities. At least we must have 1, if not 2, in your name. Then he looks at me and says, now I want to tell you one thing that I may not have told most people. And let me say this, because we are talking about him at exit point. He said, as a family, we decided long time ago that nothing would be, my name would not be in anything. He said, not in buildings, not in universities. I was so humbled. I looked at him and he said, don't be shocked. It is true. It is what we decided as a family. What lesson did I get out of that? I got a lesson that it is not, your achievements are not marked by your name being labeled on the achievements, but your achievements should be seen. And this is how I would describe the late President Kibaki, that he had a lot of achievements that he didn't have to label them in his name, but you could see them. 15 universities in a row, and we covered the whole country. And every time I went and briefed and said, these are the universities that have qualified, he would say, yes. How many are you giving Kisi? How many are you giving Meru? How many are you taking to the coast? And we spread out. And he was very, very excited he was very happy at the end when we achieved what he wanted. Because he said that was one thing that he wanted to do before he finishes. This was a very humble president, an achiever, a very quiet achiever. Most people would imagine that the ministers were actually performing. I don't think ministers were performing. He was performing through the ministers. Going by what he did through me, getting all those universities out, getting a law for higher education, another law for science and technology, different law for TVET, that was just amazing. And that, for me, was within one year and 4 months. In fact, at the end, we were not able to issue all the charters within the university within the universities themselves. And we had to do what we called mass marriage. That we had to give charters to 7 universities from KICC. And that to him, at the end of it, he just said, God bless you, go and try your luck in your elections. Because we went right to the end of the elections period. This was a man of a clear vision, as I said, a very calm leader, a man who had a roadmap. So that in roads, he had a different roadmap. In education, he had a different roadmap. In natural resources, afforestation, he had a different roadmap. And all of them were converging at one point. I was Assistant Minister of Environment during the days of Michuki before I became a minister. And it was very clear what he thought about climate change. I remember, in fact, even before I became an assistant minister, we had a caucus in Parliament on climate change, and we invited African parliamentarians to UNEP, and he made such a statement off the cuff that climate change, unless we deal with it, was going to destroy all of us. So beyond the speeches that were being made, he was very personal about issues that he believed in, and we really thank God for him. Mr. Speaker, I know there are other members, except to pray that the family finds comfort from the good statements of our experience with a man who loved his nation, who loved his country, a man who didn't want to take credit for anything, a man who didn't want to be labeled in buildings or anything, but he really believed in performance. May the Lord God rest his soul in eternal peace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Senator George Haneri.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to join my colleagues who spoke yesterday and the professor who has just spoken now in conveying my condolences to the family of the late president and the country at large. Mr. Speaker, let me begin by saying that on my own behalf, on behalf of my family, and on behalf of the people of Vihiga, I stand here in the Senate this afternoon with a very heavy heart to convey my condolences on the demise of our beloved third President of the Republic of Kenya, Mheshimiwa Emilio Mwai Kibaki. A giant has fallen, Mr. Speaker. The country has lost a hero. Mr. Speaker, as we live in this world, we all endeavor or struggle to leave the world a better place than we found it. And I can confidently stand on the floor of this House and say that our fallen president certainly achieved that. He left this world and this country a better place than he found it. Mr. Speaker, I had the chance to work with the late president. First, it was in the 7th Parliament when I was elected in a by-election in the year 1996, came in as the MP for Hamisi, and by that time, Mheshimiwa Kibaki was the leader of DP and the MP for Othaya. Mr. Speaker, in the 8th Parliament, I was lucky to be re-elected. Mheshimiwa Kibaki was also re-elected as the MP for Othaya, and he was the runner-up to President Moi, and therefore he became the leader of opposition. Mr. Speaker, in the 9th Parliament, we supported him for presidency, and he won that election to become the 3rd President of the Republic of Kenya. I'm grateful to him that he appointed me one of his assistant ministers, first of all, to serve in the Ministry of Agriculture, where I served with my friend Mheshimiwa Kipruto Arap Kirwa as my minister, and I was his deputy. Mr. Speaker, I remember at that time you were also there, I think as a director or something like that. Mr. Speaker, he later transferred me from the Ministry of Agriculture to the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife, where I served with the late Emmanuel Karisa Maitha as my minister. And when the Lord called him, Mheshimiwa Tuju Raphael was appointed to replace Maitha as my minister in that Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. Mr. Speaker, we went to the election of the 10th Parliament, where now he formed a coalition government, the Grand Coalition Government with the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. And at that time, they again appointed me to be the Assistant Minister in the Ministry of Information and Communication, where I served with the current leader of the majority in Senate, Senator Pogisio, as my minister, and I was his deputy. I'm therefore grateful to President Kibaki for he gave me the opportunity to serve this country in the ministerial position. Mr. Speaker, the President has left a big footmark on the political landscape of our country. We will remember him, or rather he'll go down in the annals of history for so many things that we cannot even be able to name all of them this afternoon. And that, Mr. Speaker, probably explains why for the last 3 days there have been long queues out here at Parliament of Kenyans thronging here to just have to pay their last respect to this great leader that has fallen. Mr. Speaker, key to the things that he introduced, of course, we all know, is the ambitious plan of giving education to all children in this country when he came up with a free primary education policy. This was unprecedented, Mr. Speaker. This was a huge landmark. We saw even people in their old age go back to school now that it had been made free. We all remember the late Mzee Maruge, who went back to primary school, Standard 1, in his 70s. Mr. Speaker, this enabled all our children who are willing to acquire primary education, which was never there before. The second thing that we will always remember him for, Mr. Speaker, during his first time also, is that he ascended to our bill to establish the CDF fund. This was the first form of devolution in this country, Mr. Speaker. CDF has had a big impact in development of our country, rural areas. Those who have utilized it well, Mr. Speaker, have seen the good fruits of it, building classrooms, building laboratories, building bridges, and so forth and so forth. We give thanks for ascending to that bill. And it is the CDF that gave birth to the devolution that we enjoy now. That was the first form of devolution. Mr. Speaker, we also remember him for stabilizing our economy and making our economy, for once, to staying rather at a positive percentage for very many years. And this went up to over 6% economic growth per annum during his era. That had never been experienced in many, many, many years. It made lives of Kenyans much, much easier. Life was affordable, unlike before and unlike after. Mr. Speaker, we also remember him for inaugurating the constitution that we are enjoying now, the new constitution of 2010. The new constitution 2010 came with so many benefits to Kenyans, so many liberties, so many freedoms. We have our Bill of Rights as one of the chapters, we have devolution, and so forth. Mr. Speaker, we will not forget the infrastructure development and the projects that he initiated in terms of building our infrastructure. The bypasses in Nairobi, which have eased congestions in the city. I don't know what we'll be doing now without those bypasses that were established by President Kibaki. The superhighway, Mr. Speaker, the Isiolo-Moyale highway, and so many others. Even the road from Nairobi to Western, where I come from, it was just impossible to travel to Western by road. The road was bad all through, from Nairobi to Western. But now we enjoy a good road that was built by this fallen hero. Mr. Speaker, he championed for gender equality, and we all remember that. For the first time in Kibaki's cabinet, we had more than 4 cabinet secretaries. It had never happened before. The first president, if I may recollect, never appointed any female minister, maybe assistant minister. President Moi only appointed 1, in the name of Nyiva Mwendwa. But Kibaki appointed about 5. including people like Charity Ngilu, Beth Mugo, Lina Chebiki Limo, Professor Margaret Kamar, who's just left, and so forth. Therefore, he played a big role in empowering the other gender. Mr. Speaker, I worked under him, and one of his hallmarks is that whenever he appointed you to a position, he allowed you to work. There was no micromanagement. He allowed his ministers to work, put in their best, do whatever they knew. And that, Mr. Speaker, was so refreshing, particularly to those who served under the previous regime. So we really want to thank this hero, the gentleman of the Kenyan politics, who played a big part to bring this country to where we are. On behalf of my family and on my own behalf, we want to pray that God rests his soul in peace. We want to pray that God gives his family the strength to bear this loss, not just to the family, but to the entire nation that is in mourning. Fare thee well, my President. May you rest in peace until we meet again. Thank you.
Senate.
For allowing me to join you and my colleagues in condoling with the family of His Excellency President, the former President of this country, President Kibaki. Mr. Speaker, I just want to own up that the first time I engaged in politics was in 2002, prior to Kibaki's election, whereby a group of us, colleagues in an office, we had agreed that we go to our neighbors. Each one of us cover, certain number of neighbors, to them, so that he can be elected as the president. So for me, our former president, the late, came, even at the time of his election, Kenyans had a lot of optimism. There was a lot of patriotism. I even remember there was an incident. Personally, I did not have an opportunity to work with him, but as a Kenyan, you cannot help to appreciate him as a person, as a leader, as the president of this country, in terms of transformation, in terms of human rights, in terms of gender equality, in terms of devolution. I mean, let's be honest, between him and Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga the Fifth, if it weren't for the two of them, the transformative constitution that we have currently, that empowers gender, that empowers the genders in terms of the equality of genders, in terms of devolution, Mr. Speaker, in terms of, this country would never have been the same without devolution. Counties like ours, we used to say, Kenya, we are going to Kenya when we are coming to this side of the country. And we never considered ourselves as part of Kenya. But right now, because of his contribution in this great country of ours, we can also feel as part of this country, as Kenyans, because truth be told, devolution, although it should have been managed better, and which is not, was not, he did not emphasize that people will mismanage devolution. But the intent of devolution was great, and that Kenyans have been empowered at local level. And I am one of the people who believe, Mr. Speaker, that had all the governors who took over county government, had they had the integrity that our former President Mwai Kibaki believed in, I think the lives of Kenyans would have been transformed with the kind of monies that are going to counties. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge the Kenyans out there to ensure that they elect a governor with integrity. There are so many Kenyans who I would say still have level of integrity, and others we cannot say the same. And Mr. Speaker, counties can either thrive, because for me, if counties were thriving, we should have not felt the need, even in terms of each other, doing all sorts of things in the name of I want my community to be the leaders. If the governors were doing what they should have done at their own level, the fight would have been within counties, not in terms of the country, because the resources would have reached the poor person that would have made a difference in their lives to ensure that they enjoy the fruits of what our former President Mwai Kibaki had, the vision that he had for this country, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the other thing that I want to commend our President was the level of patriotism that he has created in Kenyans. So far, that has not been achieved by any other president apart from him. I think Kenyans will remember, citizens' arrest of a police officer who tried to take a bribe from a matatu driver. That, was a phenomenon. It is during the time of his tenure and because of his leadership that we saw many Kenyans volunteering to pay taxes because they felt their money was going to be put in good use. One of the canon of taxation is in such that when people feel that the taxes they pay will be distributed in a just manner, then citizens are normally encouraged to pay more taxes. Right now, even there are Kenyans who don't want to pay taxes, and Kenyans who also want development. So I think Kenyans need to be more patriotic so that they start paying their taxes, so that this country can see a different level of development, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other thing that I want to commend our president, our former president, was the sparring of economics in this country. We reached up to 7%, and that was very high in such a short time, in his first term. And I think had it not been the post-election violence and the disputed election, I think he would have reached up to 10%. I have no doubt in my mind that this country would have experienced economic growth of double digits. Mr. Speaker, all is not lost. I think he has set the bar. We just need other leaders in this country to follow his example. You don't have to be the president of this country to spur economic growth. You can have that at your local level. For example, at even your county level. You can take your county to a different level by ensuring that the taxes that the county collects are collected prudently, they are put to prudent use, and whatever that comes from the national government also is also put to a good use. And Mr. Speaker, I just want to end with a few quotes that really touched my heart, that was said by our president, who is now demised. Mr. Speaker, one of the quotes was, "Leadership is a privilege to better the lives of others. It's not an opportunity to satisfy a personal greed." Mr. Speaker, many of the leaders we have currently, especially in the counties, that will not even resonate with them. If it were, then we would have a better country, a better country. And then the other quote that he said was, only by addressing the root cause of conflict and disputes can we find lasting peace in just an equitable world. Mr. Speaker, that itself is, phenomenal and, a game changer if it was put to good use. And then he also said, the era of roadside decisions, declaration have gone. My government decision will be guided by teamwork and consultations. Mr. Speaker, the public participation that we talked about, we know now who started it. A great leader of this country, a great son of this country, a son who has made a difference. And Kenya will never be the same again because of this great leader. The other quote again, he says, the government will no longer be run on the whims of individuals. He also said, I promise not to take I promise not to let you down. I will be your servant with all humility and gratitude. Tell me, even the governors in this country, Mr. Speaker, feel like a little gods, because even when they were given responsibility by the people of that county, they still feel that they own the people of that county instead of becoming their servant. So, Mr. Speaker, I do not want to repeat what others have said in terms of how great leader he is, but from the, and I have never worked with him, but I tell you, was a great leader who, if just 50% of the leaders emulated what he has done, I am telling you, Kenya will be in the list of the developed world within the next not so far future, like in the next 15 years. That is what I believe. And I also want to wish him well, and his family, I wish them well so that they can bear this great loss. And I want to assure them, as Kenyans, we share the grief with them. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mogeni Eric Okong.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for also giving me an opportunity to condole with the family of His Excellency, the late President Emilio Mwai Kibaki. Mr. Speaker, first on my own behalf, on my family's behalf, and on behalf of the people of Nyamira, I want to pass my condolences to the family of the late President Mwai Kibaki and his family and the entire in general. Mr. Speaker, I don't belong to the class of people like my friend Senator Mosiwako, faced allegations of some corruption allegations while he was in office on the purchase of some buildings in Japan. And gladly for me, he was cleared. So I'm not saying that he's corrupt because he was cleared of those allegations. But what President Kibaki did is that when that issue came to the public and he received word that his cabinet minister was under investigations, he asked him to step aside. That's how much President Kibaki pushed the accountability card. He asked his cabinet ministers to step aside, be investigated, and once recommendation is made for them either to be taken to court, then they will go to court and defend themselves. Mr. Speaker, you heard Senator Mutula tell us yesterday that the Central Bank of Kenya, head then Mr. Mulei, had criminal charges preferred against him. And he went to complain before the president, and President Kibaki told him, go and defend yourself in court. How sad it is, Mr. Speaker, that nowadays, when like I saw allegations against a cabinet secretary involving the allegations around Kimorer and Arol dams, it's actually a very senior member of the executive, occupying number 2 position, who came out to defend that particular cabinet secretary. That's not the legacy that the late President Mwai Kibaki left for us. He left for us a legacy of ensuring that we push forward the accountability card. As I draw towards conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I want to say something about the cleanup that we witnessed on the institution of the judiciary when President Kibaki assumed the mantle of leadership in 2003. I doubt, Mr. Speaker, that any president would have had the courage to do the kind of surgery that we saw in the judiciary, like the one that took place during the reign of President Mwai Kibaki. And it reminded people who are in civil service that you must always watch your back. What you do today may come out to haunt you tomorrow. It was the allegations leveled against Chunga, Mr. Speaker, on how he conducted his prosecutions when he was the director of public prosecution that cost him his job as a Chief Justice. In the history of this country, I don't know whether there will be a Chief Justice, a deputy Chief Justice, who will be removed from office from pinching the nose of a watchman. But during the reign of President Kibaki, it happened. So as I mourn this man, Mr. Speaker, this was a great leader. He has left a very rich legacy for this country. He's a man that was a statesman, was magnanimous. He cleaned up that institution called the judiciary. He transformed it, Mr. Speaker. Senator Amos Wako here will tell you that we had a long, long debate on the chapter on the judiciary. And I was one of those, as chair of Law Society of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, who was pushing forward the idea that anybody seeking to be a Chief Justice of this country, a judge of the Supreme Court, judge of the Court of Appeal, judge of the High Court, should be subjected to an open interview process where all Kenyans who are qualified are given an opportunity to be interviewed, and the best candidates should be recommended for appointments. There are people in cabinet, Mr. Speaker, who could not hear any of that. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, because Kibaki was a man who was magnanimous, who was progressive, he allowed that to be. And nowadays, any Kenyan who is qualified in the legal profession can apply, be interviewed, and be appointed to be a judge of the High Court. So I say pole, Mr. Speaker, to the family of the late Mwai Kibaki, to the people of Nyeri, and to Kenyans. And I say fare thee well, Mzee Mwai Kibaki, may your soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much, Senator Amos Wako.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to utilize a great statesman, great son of Kenya, a brilliant mind. I think if he had taken science, he would have been called a genius, very eloquent, and yet very humble, a man of humility. Mr. Speaker, sir, I came to hear of Mwai Kibaki when I heard that he was the first African to get a first-class honors degree in economics that I'm lecturing in Makerere. And I said, hey, this is a type of man I would like to know more closely. Fortunately, when I was in high school, during the holidays at Alliance, I took one of my holidays here in Nairobi, and that was the time of the elections in Kenya. That was, I think, 1962, 63 there. And in Nairobi, the key people who were campaigning for KANU was Tom Mboya, the General Secretary, and Mwai Kibaki, the Executive Officer. So I and my classmates who are in Nairobi, we made it a point to attend all the campaign meetings which were being addressed by these two brilliant sons of Kenya. You can imagine how much we were impressed, how we followed them. And at least we managed, Mr. Speaker, sir, to catch their eye. And I can say we caught the eye of Tom Mboya, caught the eye of Mwai Kibaki. That time we were in Form 2, Form 3 at Alliance High School. And we engaged in discussions. And I was very impressed that they took some of our ideas. They thought they were ideas worth following within the KANU. The idea that although you have a KANU youth wing, which is supposed to maintain order and so on, we should have an aspect of youth like those educated up to Form 4 at that time, which was quite something, and those going into universities and so on, would be mentored by KANU, but not only mentored by KANU, they would also give ideas to KANU. In other words, there will be a channel through which they can give ideas on how this country should be ruled soon after independence. So I was quite happy from that time to get to know Honorable Mwai Kibaki. Later on, Mr. Speaker, sir, we then came across him when I was the chairman of the Law Society of Kenya and the chairman of the Association of Professional Societies in East Africa. Now, as at that time, I would say the establishment was not very keen on indigenous African Kenyans in the professions. The person who led that idea against Africans, I must say, was the late Sir Charles Njonjo. So the only place we could get some solace, people who would understand us, was to go to Mwai Kibaki. And I'm proud to say that I did invite him to a few occasions to the Law Society to address us. And I did invite him on a few occasions to the Association of Professional Societies in East Africa to address us. And he did not let us down. In other words, he was a friend in government, which speaks a lot about his contribution as a professional, not just a brilliant economist, but also as a professional. I must say I admired him so much as a brilliant economist that what people may not know, I also pursued a degree in economics at the University of London. I did not get a first, at least I got an honors, but I'm more known as a lawyer rather than as an economist. Mr. Speaker, sir, then I became to appreciate him even more, Mr. Speaker, sir, when he now became the president. But just before he became the president, for those who are alive at that time, you must, and seeing the newspapers at that time, I know one of the scribes of the newspapers is here, and he will cause headlines to be published, Wako must go with Moi. Wako must, is among the first to go. They would name me, they would name other senior cabinet ministers who are close to Daniel Teacher Arap Moi. They would name senior civil servants, particularly the Commissioner of Police and the head of public service, and say they must go. I was very permanent on that list. And it is true, Mr. Speaker, sir, that when he became president, all of them went, save Amos Wako, who stayed on and served him for close to 9 years as the Attorney General. I must say that the late Mwai Kibaki was a man of his word. You could rely, you could depend, you could have faith on his word. Much as the noises were being made around that time, I can disclose today that Mwai Kibaki, before he was even inaugurated as president, and when he was very sick in the bed, as you know, after the accident, and he returned from London, I did used to meet him, and he did assure me that Amos Wako, we have known each other. I have confidence in your abilities. I know what you have been doing in the government. You have been a reformer within government, although you have not been, and by that you are not making noise outside, but within government you are one of the reformers in government. And he assured me, in the presence of his wife, in the presence of Kereri, in the presence of Stanley Murage, when he was on his bed, that when he takes over as president, he'll keep me as the Attorney General. But then you always doubt a word from a politician, particularly around that time, that hii ni kusema tu, lakini when the time comes, I'm going. And actually I began making preparations to leave government. I was elected by the General Assembly to the United Nations International Law Commission just in preparation of my retirement when the next government came in. But there was no need even to make those preparations. Even some of his followers, as soon as he took government, I could see they really wanted me out. But Mwai Kibaki kept his word and made me stay on with him and appreciated my advice. When you have such a person who is giving you more than a second chance, who has confidence in you, and his was a reforming government. I had been Attorney General in the Arap Moi's government, which people said was not a reformist, and therefore maybe my colors were non-reformist. But he kept me, and he had confidence in me, and he had confidence that even if he had those very sweeping reforms that were coming, I would be able, as the Attorney General, to shepherd through those reforms. Such a man who appreciates you that way, I don't know what I can say, but say thank you very much, Emilio Kibaki, for having given me that chance to serve you, for having had confidence in me as the Attorney General, as a reformist, and as the Attorney General, and allowing me to serve you almost the entire of your period, about 9 years, just less than 1 year. Just less than 1 year, because the new constitution had said that the current Chief Justice stays in power for 6 months, and the current Attorney General stays in power for 1 year before they quit, as arrangements are being made to quit. So I really, Mr. Speaker, sir, appreciate this man to whom we are saying goodbye. As a man, he was a man who was really committed, in the real sense of the word, to the rule of law. And because of brevity of time, I'll not go too much into that. But I'll just give you one example of his commitment to the rule of law. Some of you may remember, Pogisho may remember, because I think you are old enough to remember, that just after the new constitution was promulgated, a new Attorney General was appointed, a new Chief Justice was appointed, a new DPP was appointed by Kibaki. I was out of the country at that time. When I came back, I said that act by the president was unconstitutional. Gicheru, who was the then Chief Justice, on behalf of the Judicial Service Commission, also said that act was unconstitutional as it relates to the Chief Justice. Now, as it relates to the DPP, the new constitution provided that there must be a transparent process of advertising for the job, shortlisting, interviewing publicly for the job before somebody is appointed. So the whole thing was unconstitutional. Now, another president would have said, I've appointed and that is it, isn't it? But because of Mike Kibaki's commitment to the rule of law, because of his commitment to constitutionalism, he revoked all those appointments. And then I went on to serve 1 more year. The chair went on to serve 6 more months as required. And the post of the Director of Public Prosecutions was duly advertised. And it went through the process as was required under the Constitution. Another president would not have done that. He just have said, I've appointed, that is it, it's final. But Mike Kibaki, as soon as he realized that what he had done was unconstitutional, he revoked the appointments and allowed the due constitutional process to take on. Mr. Speaker, sir, that is Mike Kibaki's commitment to the rule of law and to governance. Mike Kibaki's commitment to the Constitution and constitutionalism and new Constitution is well-founded. Mr. Speaker, sir, in ordinary times, Kenya would have had a new Constitution. In fact, this is what I'd been fighting for during the time of Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. But that was never to be. And therefore, when the new president came in, I did remind him that that can be his legacy now, to have a new constitution. And we all know that a new constitution was promulgated with Kibaki as the president. I do remember when I had a meeting with him there, soon thereafter, just the two of us, he said, what more can you give a country? What more can a president give a country? What more can the chief legal advisor to the government give a country than a new constitution? You know, he was very proud of it, and he will forever be remembered as a person under whose watch a new constitution was promulgated. Just again to show that he was really a man who was a strict adherence to the rule of law, I can tell you as a fact, and I will not go into examples, many examples, where in the course, if there was a decision to be made, and say the people that was out of the country and the people I left behind were asked to give an opinion by people in government, and they went to the Mwai Kibaki to say, this is what it is. We have now got a legal opinion from the office of the Attorney General. He would always ask, was the Attorney General Amos Wako there? You see, part to this. If they said no, it's out of the country, you will say, bas, tungoje mpaka rudi. So on a number of occasions, in the Speaker's side, I was around most of the time because on legal matters, nothing would really happen until Kibaki heard from the chief legal and principal legal advisor to the government, who was me. That made me very happy and very proud, in fact, that here I have a president who has every confidence in me. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think I came in when my chair of the legal committee was talking about Kibaki's zero tolerance towards corruption. Again, I can give you many examples on this, but let me just give you one example. And the one example was the World Duty free case, where the person from Dubai, United Arab Emirates, Mr. Ibrahim, I think, was claiming against the government in billions of shillings, of dollars. Actually, it was $500 million special damages, plus general damages, plus costs. But then somewhere within the case, which he had filed before the arbitration, he had mentioned that he had obtained that contract by bribing the leadership of the country at that time. And in fact, he mentioned that at one time, he had to give about $1 million. Of course, afterwards, he did explain that he had been told that this is not a bribe as such, but it is to help the various Harambes and so on. So the contract was tainted with corruption, and I took the primary point that an international tribunal cannot enforce a contract which is tainted with illegality, which is tainted with corruption. And here we have the affidavit of the person himself, of the claimant, saying that he did that. So what happened next is that the claimant got hold of some very senior people in government and somehow convinced them that the case should be settled out of court. And that means a bit of payment out of court. I was a bit stubborn there, but somehow they managed to get their way to the president. So one day, Mr. Speaker, sir, I was summoned to, the president called me and said, please come to State House now, if you can. And there I met all these people plus senior people in government who said it must be settled. And I just said, yeah, it should be settled, but Mr. President, what I would like is for Kenya to be given the opportunity to argue before an international tribunal that a case which is tainted with corruption, which is tainted with illegality, should not be enforced by an international tribunal. That's all I want Kenya to have, that opportunity. If they say it can be enforced, then we can come, sit down, and negotiate. Mr. Speaker, sir, although the people on the other side were heavyweights, and I could see they would have benefited from a settlement out of court, the president agreed with me and said, let the International Tribunal decide on this point of the Attorney General first. Then after that, we can decide to go ahead. I was very impressed. And it showed very, very clearly that the president could not stand corruption in government. Mr. Speaker, sir, this president was a man who was very much in support of regional, economic, social, and if possible, political integration. And by that, I talk about East Africa. And it so happened, Mr. Speaker, sir, that as at that time, the president in Kenya, Kibaki, was a Kenyan who was educated in Uganda, Makerere. The president of Tanzania, Benjamin Mkapa, was a Tanzanian who was also educated in Makerere. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni was a Ugandan who was educated in Tanzania. And therefore, these presidents had seen the values of closer economic integration within East Africa. They had enjoyed those benefits, Mr. Speaker, sir. And because of their common ideology on that issue, they decided to form a committee under the East African Community a committee to suggest ways in which the road towards the political federation of East Africa can be expedited. Because within the treaty, the East African Treaty, it says that the ultimate aim of this treaty is political federation, Article 5. So this committee was supposed to find ways in which this can be fast-tracked. And as fortune would have it, they appointed me to be the chairman of that committee. And so I had to talk to all the three presidents. Mr. Speaker, sir, when I came and had now in that capacity an interview with our president, I was just amazed beyond words. Amazed because he had written many articles appearing in various journals which went under his name on the advantages and the benefits of closer regional economic integration. So it made my work very, very easy as far as that is concerned. He was very much committed. And when we were in Arusha, his contribution, and wherever I went, his name in East Africa, Kibaki's name was really revered as a person who was not just a Kenyan, but a true East African. Speaker, sir, when I went to Arusha Club, and I was having an evening there, a dinner evening there, and the members of the club came and said, go and thank your president. Without him, Arusha Club would not have been there. And what happened, that during the nationalization of land in Tanzania, that golf course of the Arusha Club was going to be nationalized, and there would have been no club. And in any case, golf was a bourgeoisie game, pastime, and so on. But it took President, then it took Mike Kibaki, who was then at that time Minister for Finance, to talk to President Julius Nyerere, and that's how the golf course of Arusha Club was preserved. So, Speaker, sir, that speaks volumes. And whenever you went, you found some such type of actions done by the president, which fostered the unity, which more or less said, we East Africa, we are really one. Mr. Speaker, sir. Speaker, sir, I've talked about regional integration, corruption, and so on. Mike Kibaki was a humble person whom you could easily mistake as, he's not here even hearing what you are saying and so on sometimes. He does not know what's going on around him. But I did notice at the time that the agreement was signed between him and Raila, which brought in the Grand Coalition. Mr. Speaker, sir, that he was very much aware. And to show that he is a man who could make decisions and be very firm on it, I can tell you for sure that most of his members of cabinet had sworn that that agreement should not be underpinned by a constitutional amendment. The issue being that the president can even appoint a prime minister, can even appoint a deputy prime minister, he can appoint ministers, and there has to be trust, and that therefore the other side must trust that the president will not dismiss the ministers appointed by the other side, will not dismiss the prime minister using the immense powers he had under the old constitution. Of course, the other side could not trust that, and therefore it became necessary to have a constitutional amendment. But one side had completely refused. And that was actually the deadlock that was there. Everything else had been agreed, but that one thing is a constitutional amendment required for this. and I believe Orengo mentioned that yesterday, that at that meeting of Kofi Annan, Mkapa, Kuracha Machel, Raila Odinga, Kibaki, I was the only other person there. And then Raila asked that the other person, that Orengo be called in to advise on that issue. The previous day, of course, Kofi Annan, as usually a friend of mine, had called me and I told him what my legal view is. And he had asked me if I can say that view in front of my president, because he knew the people's president were against that view. I said, my job is just to say the law as it is, and I leave everything else to whatever. So that morning I was invited to come in, Orengo was invited to come in. Other ministers wanted to come in, but they were refused completely. And we discussed, and we were able, Kibaki agreed with me that we must have a constitutional amendment. The previous day I told him that, everybody is against it, but this is really the legal position. And you'll have to deal with your ministers. I don't know how. He said, no, Mr. Amos, we have to do what is right, particularly at a time like this, when the country is on the brink of collapsing. We have to do what is right politically, but what is right more constitutionally. So he told me, to be brave also and just say it as it is. So I said it as it is, and it was agreed, and then I and Orengo were asked to go somewhere and now draft the entire agreement as far as those aspects were concerned, which we did. We signed every page, and we came back, and it was signed. I'm just quoting this because it shows the president as a man who would do what is right, even if those around him are advising him to the contrary. Many a time, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have seen people at the level of presidents or presidential aspirants and so on actually being maneuvered this way, that way by the people around them, completely. But in that one instant, I saw that President Kibaki was not a man to be maneuvered by the opinions of those close around him. What he wanted to know and to do was what was right in the circumstances. Mr. Speaker, sir, was a person who really valued the downtrodden of these people, people generally. I do remember him telling me and others that the worth of a country is measured by how it treats the lowly in that.
Your time is up. Okay, please.
Minutes. Yeah. How it treats the lowly in that community. And that's why he asked his vice president to see how the prisoners, Mr. Speaker, sir, were being treated. I also saw his views on privatization of corporations, Mumias particularly and others, where he really argued that the people to buy these shares should not be people from outside that region. There should be more the people who should buy shares in these corporations and not people from outside to come and you call it privatization. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are mourning somebody whom I really value, who was very close to my heart, and I take this opportunity to express my sincere condolences to the family, particularly to Jimmy and Judy and the other children who have survived. To the people of Odaya, I know he did a lot. I went there when he was the Minister of Finance, and the roads were enviable, the roads in Odaya and so on. To the people of Kenya, and particularly also to the people of East Africa, who regarded Mwai Kibaki as their leader. With also few remarks, I beg.
May I now call upon the mover to reply.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to reply. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all the members, the senators who have spoken, and very high regard of the departed third President of the Republic of Kenya. The Speaker, the history of Mwai Kibaki can be written, and one of the things that will stand out is indeed he was brilliant. Indeed, he was very kind. He was a reformer from the start, Mr. Speaker. He tried to reform the parties where he was, and he tried to reform the economy from where he was, and he has succeeded, Mr. Speaker. We have spoken about that history, and I'd like to hear. I liked what I was hearing from Amos Wako, who worked with him very closely. And you can see, Mr. Speaker, that Amos can be given the whole day to talk, and he will not lack something to say about President Kibaki. Mr. Speaker, my stint with President Kibaki was not as long, and yet I could still speak a lot about him. When I went to Makerere University, Mr. Speaker, the record is there at Makerere University. Mr. Speaker, I even knew that he was a leader from Makerere University. He was the chairperson or the chairman of the Kenya Students Association at Makerere. Within the students of the university guild, the Students Guild, Mr. Speaker, that he had opportunities, Mr. Speaker, just to excel academically. When he graduated in 1955, Mr. Speaker, he immediately thought of his country, how he would be of use to his country, and was therefore able to go on and study in London, graduating in 1955. And things worked very fast for him because of his brilliance and his leadership as a speaker. As we know, he was immediately called to come and join the team at KANU. Finally, Mr. Speaker, you know that the constitution making of this country, from the independence constitution that he was involved, as you have heard from members, in the independence constitution, as well as the crowning jewel of his life, of his leadership, Mr. Speaker, which we now know as the 2010 Constitution, a constitution of reform and to make Kenya a great country. Speaker, we mourn a leader who stands out among the presidents of this country. Being the third president, Mr. Speaker, he was able, in my view, to outshine many other people in this country. He stood out in humility, Mr. Speaker, and stood tall in humility. If you looked at him, he dealt with everybody with concern. The last part of Senator Amos Wako's speech, Speaker, was very, very important. The one of dealing with prison reforms, the one of dealing with the downtrodden, the people who are the people who did not have opportunities like the rest of us. Speaker, he dealt with that. To afford free primary and secondary education was not easy, Mr. Speaker, particularly the free primary education. That was a big move. It was a big budget issue, and he stood with the people. Mr. Speaker, we do want to conclude this matter, that today the body of the third president of the Republic leaves Parliament. Speaker, if you have looked, if you have seen the last 3 days, Speaker, the number of Kenyans who are milling around, who are lining up, who, Mr. Speaker, are going to see the body of the departed president, you can tell that people loved him. Particularly, Mr. Speaker, I was listening to some of the street kids who went to line up as well. And some of them were speaking about the things that changed during that time. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I want to raise the issue of the Houses of Parliament, that Mwai Kibaki respected Parliament. The Speaker, it was those days when you are president, you are also a member of Parliament. And as such, Mr. Speaker, you interacted with members. And when you interacted with members, Mr. Speaker, you understood the system. Remember, he was a leader of government business for a long time, and then he was a leader of opposition, so he understood the workings of Parliament. He understood Parliament, and that's why he liked Parliament. In fact, during his tenure, Mr. Speaker, Parliament attained independence of sorts. And it was possible during that time, Mr. Speaker, to say that Parliament would then manage their own budget. And so he respected the fact that we can have a strong Parliament, a Parliament that would then, Mr. Speaker, pass laws, and where he was advised, he would, of course, listen to Parliament. He lies in state in Parliament, partly because he's a long-serving parliamentarian, Mr. Speaker. Apart from being the president of the country, he served for 50 years. Mr. Speaker, that is a long time. It's more than half of his life. He served as a member of Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, that is to tell us, and to tell our Wananchi sometimes, that to be consistent is very important. The people of Othaya must have benefited from that consistency. Today, I remember the turnover in this house is very high. People come for one term and they go, people come and go, but this man served for 50 long years. And that's how we could come to trust him to be the president of the country. The Speaker, we have an opportunity during this eulogizing to say thank you to the family of Mwai Kibaki for lending us, the country, the service of this great person whom we mourn. We want to say thank you to the people of Othaya. Thank you to the people of Nyeri and Central, who then gave us this man. And Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, and the crowning thing is that we say, we pray in prayers, we believe that Mwai Kibaki's soul will rest in peace, in eternal peace, and we pray that God, our Almighty God, will rest his soul in eternal peace. A great man has passed on. We know that his greatness will rub onto other people, will spread around the world, and will get great people like President Emilio Mwai Kibaki. And with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I now put the question, which is that aware that the late former President Emilio Mwai Kibaki, CGH, was the third President of the Republic of Kenya between December 2002 and March 2013, in addition to serving as the fourth Vice President of the Republic of Kenya between 1978 and 1988. Noting that the late former President Mwai Kibaki had a long and illustrious career in public service, spanning over 50 years, where he served as a Member of Parliament for Donholm and other constituencies for 10 parliamentary terms from 1963 to 2013, and as a cabinet minister in various ministries for 28 years from 1963 to 1991. Appreciating the late President Mwai Kibaki's work in setting the foundation for Kenya's socio-economic turnaround and infrastructure development, liberalization of education, including introduction of free primary education, enhancement of the Bill of Rights, liberation of the media, including promotion of media freedom, championing of women participation in politics and leadership, promoting environmental conservation, including sustainable management of water and natural resources, and deepening of telecommunication services and overseeing the unprecedented growth in the banking sector, among other milestones. Further appreciating the late President's efforts in governance and institutional reforms throughout his public service career that culminated in the promulgation of a new constitution in 2010 that ultimately ushered in a new governance paradigm. Cognizant of the President's proclamation of Friday, 22nd April 2022, communicating the passing on of former President Mwai Kibaki, CGH. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves that the condolences of the Senate be recorded in honor of the late President Mwai Kibaki's service as a selfless statesman, a national hero, an accomplished economist, and a member of Parliament for his contribution in nation building and Kenya's socio-economic development. As many are of that opinion, say aye. As many are of conduct, you say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable Senators, the upstanding honorable senators, there being no other business on the order paper, the Senate stands adjourned until Thursday, 28th April 2022 at 2:30 p.m.